Hi, I'm an artist and also an avid Krita user, and I finally upgraded to Krita 5.3. I know, very late to the game, but better late than never. So there are quite a lot of new things available in this update, but I am mainly interested in three things. The comic panel tool for future me, the new text tool for freelancer me, and finally, the thing current me wanted to check out the most, the brush mutator. So let's briefly go over the first two things before we really dive into the mutator, shall we? So for the first one, the comic panel editing tool. And this is something I really excited for, as I just said, future me. So that's why I didn't really play around too much with this, as current me doesn't really have the need to use this yet. But basically, it is something you use to quickly cut out some comic panels. So for this, you first have to draw a rectangle on a vector layer. And also, by the way, I am very impressed with how we can edit the line of the rectangle into different styles, like this dotted line and stuff. And I know it may be something pretty basic, but since I have never ever touched the vector layer before, so it's still very impressive to me. And it is in the tool option of the select shape tool, by the way. Anyway, let's come back to the comic panel. Once you got your rectangle, now we can use the tool to cut out some panels. And it is pretty simple. You can just drag the tool from one side to another of the rectangle, and ta-da, you got your panel. And you can also adjust the amount of gap you want between your panel in the tool option as well, very handy. And if you want to close the gap, again go to the tool option, click on the second icon over here. This is a merging mode, and the first icon is the cutting mode, by the way. Anyway, once you are in the merging mode, you can just drag over the gaps to close them. And yeah, that's it for the comic panel tool, something really convenient. And now the only question I have is, can we have vector brushes in Krita? Because, like this, these are just some very plain and frankly quite boring lines. Like, what if I wanted the panel to have the same kind of lines as the line art, which was done in some kind of band brushes, Like, I know pretty much nothing about vectors, so I think I will have to look into it more. Anyway, that is a lot to say about something I don't really have the need for yet. Let's move on to the new text tool next and trying to be a little bit more brief than this. So in the previous versions of Krita, if you want to insert text, you had to use this pop-up window, which, to be very honest, it was quite clunky, but it still got the job done. Not very efficiently, but it was fine. But now, she's no more. Please say hello to this beauty instead. Like, with her, we can now finally type directly on the canvas, and we can stretch the text directly on the canvas. Make them tall, make them chubby, make them tiny, you name it all. We can type text on the path, yes, directly on the canvas, and no more separated window. And so much more that I haven't even discovered yet. But my god, this is game changing, like especially for freelancer me. Like, now I can design titles in peace. It's so easy, so intuitive, so good. Like, thank you so much, developer team. Like, you are doing good work. Oh my god, so good. Finally, let's talk about the thing I am the most excited about, the brush mutator. And it is what past me was testing with this lady over here. But first, what is it? So basically, it is a tool that allows you to randomize some brush properties. As you can see on the rocker right here, you can mutate the size, the rotation, the opacity, the flow of the brush. And you can also mutate some color property as well, like the hue, the saturation, and the value. And for each of these, you can set how much you want to mutate from 0% to 100%. With 100% being the most you want to mutate. And once you are happy with your settings, you can hit mutate over here to mutate the brush, or press the shortcut for it, which is Ctrl-Alt-Shift-M. Very long, I know. That's why I prefer to keep the mutator docker on hand like this. And after mutating, if you got some brushes that you would like to keep, like you like it, you can go to the edit brush setting button over here, like on top of the screen, and a new window will pop up, and you click on the save new brush preset, change the name to how you like, and maybe editing the brush thumbnail a little bit to differentiate it easier, and then click the save button to save the mutated version, and you're done. So the first time I saw this new feature, I think it will be a really good idea to let it randomize all the brushes and choose all the colors I would use for some kind of study. And that was exactly what I did with this lady over here. I set everything on the Docker here to be 100% for max chaos, and also to make it randomize the brushes and choose colors at the same time for me, for some efficiency. Well, everything except for the opacity, because I don't want the colors to be transparent when I put them on the canvas. And I used it on 5 different brushes, including some of my all-time favorites like the Charcoal Rock Soft and the Charcoal Comb 12. And I will put the whole list on the screen over here. As for the colors, here's the palette I got, which was fine because we did have some different values here, but to be honest, I wasn't too impressed by it. But I still persuaded myself to continue because the sketch of this lady turned out to be real cute, like very cute. And then I got even less impressed when I finished blocking all the colors in. So I had to tell myself again, just at least try to do some rendering. Like, you don't have to do too much, just some basic rendering to see how this one turned out, okay? And that's how I successfully talked myself into continuing this challenge, mainly because this was the second time I did this. I really didn't want to restart for another time. So yeah, that's the reason why past me was pretty rough with all the brushstrokes. But the more I was working on her, the more I was like, well, this is not that bad though. Oh, like she turned out to be much cuter than I expected. Pretty cute to the point that I decided to put some finishing touches with some patterns and metallic brush on her, which, yes, they are technically outside of the scope for this challenge, but she looks better that way, so yeah. So from this little experiment, I think we can pretty safely decide that the mutator is not very good at randomizing a color palette from scratch. Like, even though the colors weren't the worst, they weren't the best either. Like, they were in a pretty awkward middle ground. So I think we have to find another way to utilize this feature for picking colors. As for the brushes, for this lady, I mainly used the mutated Charcoal Rock Soft to render her, and even though it looked quite rough when I tested it out, like compared to the original one, in practice, like when I used it to render, it wasn't really that different from the normal Charcoal Rock Soft. So, kinda disappointed in a sense. But don't worry, we don't stop here. As you can see, we will study another head here, and this time we will test the mutator in a somewhat more realistic scenario, which meant I will use all the mutated brushes that I got, including all the previous 5 plus 3 others that I got while doing some 10-minute study. And as far as the colors, I will pick the initial colors myself, and then we will introduce the mutator later into the study. For now, let's talk about some of the brushes I used this time. The first one was the mutated concrete bacon block, which I really like the texture of the original one, and for some reasons, when I hit mutate, I got one that had even more texture than normal. So my luck was pretty good. And for this lady, I used this brush for the blocking step, so you won't see that much texture here. But I will show you the edge study where the texture got all crazy and stuff, like especially on the cracked eggshell part. Like, that part looks so good. Like, I love it so much. Like, look at this. And then for the rendering of her face, I mainly used the mutated Charcoal Comb 12, one of my super favorites, as you may know. And generally, the mutated version didn't really change too much, especially when I used this for rendering like this, because the pattern itself didn't change at all. So overall, it still looked the same as the original one, except for one tiny detail. So originally, the brush will make these really sharp lines or shapes like this, but with the mutated one, it makes these really soft shapes like this. And I think it has something to do with the rotation and stuff, but I'm not too sure about that. But the mechanism is not that important here. Like, the important thing is that these softer shapes allow me to paint one of the most glistening highlights on her face. You can see that the most clearly in the area under her left eye, like this part. And I know it's quite subtle, but these subtle details will make the biggest differences. So, as you can see, using the mutator on the brushes could kinda be hit or miss. Well, maybe misses most of the time, but every once in a while it can be a hit. So just play around with it. You won't lose anything after all. And also, I think the mutator will be a really good starting point for someone who wants to experiment around with brushes but gets intimidated with how complex the brush editor looks. And yep, that's me. I'm talking about me. Hello. Anyway, for the mutator, you can just click on the mutate button to have a slightly different version of the brush. Easy enough, yeah. And that's for the brushes. How about the colors? So I wanted to use the mutator to pick some colors instead of doing the color wheel roulette. And for anybody who doesn't know what that is, first you can check out this video over here. I explain things in great details there. But for a quick summary, the roulette is for when I want to pick a new color with a different hue but in the same value to spice the painting up a little. And what I do is I drop in a color I want to change hue, spin the wheel over here, and then put that color on the same area. And the problem with this method is the value can change because the hues can have different values on the exact same spot of the square, So it's not the most accurate method ever. So when I see I can set the value of the colors to be 0 on the mutator docker, like literally not change at all, I thought this must be the perfect solution for that problem. So I set the hue to be 100%, the saturation and the value to be 0% in order to mutate me some colors that has the same value but in different hue. And in theory, this should work perfectly. In reality though, I realized this setting only changed the position of the cursor on the wheel over here. So literally the exact same thing I usually did. So it had the exact same problem that I wanted to solve in the first place. This got my hope up so high. But anyway, just out of curiosity, I tested the color mutator with each of the properties set to the max, like 100%. So as you might already know, the hue will only affect the cursor on the wheel, and the saturation will make the cursor on the square go horizontally. The values makes the same cursor go vertically. So yeah, the mechanism behind the color mutators is pretty simple, but I still think there is potential to use the mutator in place of the color wheel roulette. Like, I think there will be some configurations that work, like definitely not something extreme like what I did here, but what it is exactly, I don't really know. I have to do some more testing. Yeah. Anyway, the lady over here turned out to be super pretty though. So let's take a look at her process before we go, shall we? So Krita 5.3 has so many good things, like big love texture. And I still have some more testing to do with the mutator though, but that's great. I love playing around with new things. Anyway, if you enjoy what I do here on the channel, please consider supporting me on Ko-fi or by becoming a YouTube membership. So that's it for now. Thank you so much for watching and for supporting me. Hope you have a great day/night ahead and see you later.